for you to be here today as we honor the presence of David in our lives and celebrate his life and what it means to each one of us. So thank you for bringing your love and your energy into this space today, for creating the sacred circle and the vessel of community that holds Jan, Jessica, Kira, and all of their family close. Whether we talk about ancient religions, philosophy across centuries, or contemporary science, there is one message that all of these voices carry to us, and that is the enduring presence and power of the life that is within us. We are energy forms, and energy never disappears. Oh, it changes form. It moves on to a next experience, to a new expression, and David has moved on to that new adventure. As much as we might wish that he were still present physically, we can also give thanks for, as Jan said to me, that he is dancing in the cosmos, free of pain, full of joy, delighting that his journey goes on, and that every new experience rises to meet him, for David cherished that in his life. Every new thing, through his endless curiosity. Every new individual that meant learning something new and meeting and making a new friend. This is the David we knew in our community. The David who was an artisan, a true craftsman, an open-hearted gentleman. So we believe about David that his soul is that is carrying him forward into what rises next to meet him. Even if we cannot see him, we trust that indeed he dances in the cosmos. And it is our prayer from this moment forward that we may never think of David as someone who has lived, but we see David as someone who continues to live life fully, joyfully, clearfully, just as he did here when he was on earth. And he continues in our hearts with the same presence and power. And we trust here that he continues in the heart of God. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a renowned psychiatrist who was famous for her work around the subject of death and dying. And in her workshop, she shared a very clear story that illustrates the power that our energy form holds for each of us. There was a woman who came into surgery under emergency circumstances. And on the table, she died. And so doctors and nurses, the whole team, they explode into action in the effort to save this woman's life. And indeed, she recovers and revives. And when she wakes up in the recovery room, she is beyond excited to gather her family around her and describe for them the experience that took place, while the medical definition of her physical being was dead. In that space where her heart had stopped and the medical team was working over her feverishly, she had this experience of floating up near the ceiling of the room and seeing all of that activity. And as she described this to her family, where the position of the doctor and the nurses and what took place and how it was being done and who was in the room, the family was stunned. Now, many of us have heard these stories because they're part of our culture, as modern medicine is able to work such miracles with our physical being. That part was normal. What was stunning to the family of this woman is that she had been physically blind since birth. She had never seen color. She had never seen her family. She didn't really know how a doctor and a medical team would be dressed in an emergency room and what that whole facility would look like and the equipment and how it was attached to her body. And she described it all in great detail. In the experience of death, yet fully present. For me, this tells us that David is still as close as our hearts, as close as our breathing, because we are all connected in an experience of oneness through this life and the life that continues. So I invite you to hold to the truth of David's powerful presence in your life, and know that that life goes on. The family has chosen to share a particularly meaningful piece of music, as well as some beautiful photography that is David's. And the prelude this morning, they would want you to know, was music composed by David himself. He was gifted in so many ways.
Lay down your sweet and weary head. Night is falling. You've come to journey's end. Sleep now and dream of the ones who came before. They are calling from across a distant shore. Why do you weep? What are these tears upon your face? Soon you will see all of your fears will pass away, safe in my arms. You're only sleeping. What can you see? Why do the white doves call across the sea? A billow rises. The ships have come to carry you home. Dawn will turn to silver glass. Light on the water, all souls pass. Into the world of night, through shadows falling, out of memory and time. Don't say we have come now to the end. White shores are calling. You and I will meet again. You'll be here in my arms, just sleeping. What can you see? On the horizon, why do the white doves call?
just like to say that my daughters worked very hard, putting a few of the thousands of photographs they took into a slideshow, which we will access if possible. When it's done importing, because he had too many photographs. And so if that happens, then they can just start showing. Dave was born in Rhode Island into an Irish Catholic family. He was the fifth of 6 children, 3 a decade or more older than him, 1 5 years older, and 1 a year younger. He grew up on Buzzards Bay, so the ocean was his friend from the start. From an early age, he would spend hours along the shore, finding beautiful and interesting stones and shells, and fishing. He would get up early in the morning to share breakfast with his father, who was in advertising and not around much. He always appreciated how hard his father had worked to enable him to live in such a beautiful place. He was a wild child, always on the go, always interested in new things. His nickname was Tiger. Apparently, his mother had some difficulty keeping track of him. It was early days for permissive parenting, and strict discipline was the rule. He started out in Catholic school, but managed to get himself kicked out by 4th. He was rather proud of that. So he was a troublemaker, he was an instigator, and apparently headed down a dark path in his college and post-college years. But the move to Hawaii was a breakaway from that. Still, his family thanks me for marrying him and saving his life. Dave was always a spiritual person. He told me about a Native American boy who came to play with him for a time, then had to leave because his tribe didn't actually exist in this world anymore. He traveled the universe via astral projection, not knowing that it was called that. And he described, and he had dreams of events that later occurred. And he described a temporary death experience in which he encountered the unconditional love that we're told awaits us. He wanted to stay, but his grandparents told him he had to go back. He had things to do. This account is a great comfort now, knowing that he has not gone into the unknown, but to a familiar place, where he had wanted to stay so many years ago. One time, Dave went out on Buzzards Bay in his boat, and I'm going to save that for later. Sorry. His musical talents were apparent early in his life as well. At the age of 6 or so, he was playing the piano in a neighbor's house. A parent came to see who was playing and was surprised that it wasn't a much older child. David didn't read music, and he was playing his own composition. He continued to compose, as we heard earlier, later played the drums. He was always tapping out rhythms while he was working or driving a car. By the time Dave was in elementary school, his oldest siblings were leaving home. They had children of their own while he was still in school.